That's better. Forgive me this evening. This is my first time through, so please bear with me. This is the Tuesday, May 8th, 2012 Board of Education meeting, Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205. The board has been in closed session since 6 p.m. Discussing topics under the category of employment of employee. First, I call the roll, Mrs. Deroni. Is that what we're asking for, or should I just say all board members are present?
You can either call the roll or note that you've already called the roll and that there are 7 board members present.
Okay. There are 7 board members present, none absent. And the next is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next order of business is student and staff recognition. The first, can I turn this over to you for Teacher Appreciation Week? You want to introduce the...
The first thing, we have a number of recognitions the Board of Education would like to recognize this evening. We're going to start off with just an awareness and a recognition of teachers. It is Teacher Appreciation Week, if you didn't realize that, and I think it's a special time to recognize the dedicated teachers across the country, but especially in Elmhurst, and the outstanding job they do. So I understand I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Collins, and he has some words related to the Teacher Appreciation Week recognition.
Hi. Last night, I was honored to be asked to give the opening remarks to the York Academic Awards night. And I just want to take an excerpt out of the speech that I gave last night that I think sums up some things pretty well. Just to give you context, I was talking about the people who are behind the success of our students. And there were 3 parts. First, their parents, and then second is teachers. So here's how I said that section of it. The first pillar that's embedded in that strong foundation that your parents gave you are the other people in your life that care about you and have helped shape your life. I was recently asked by my employer to serve as a mentor to a young man in another line of business. When I met him for the first time, the first question he asked me was, who besides your parents were the biggest influences in your life and helped you attain the success that you've attained? You know, and that was a striking question for me because I had to think about it for a while, and there were a long period of awkward silence. And I really think he expected to hear names of my former managers, the people that taught me our business, the people that promoted me along the way. But when I really thought about it, the first name that popped in my head was a guy named Dick Krybeck. He was my 7th and 8th grade, he was my 7th and 8th grade math teacher. And without some tough love from him, I would never have gotten my mathematics career on course. And I never would have been able to go through college as an engineering major. And then names from my high school career popped into my head. Names like Ed Homan, Keith Olson, my chemistry and physics teachers. Les Zunkel, who taught me to stand up in front of an audience, and I'm not sure Les would be proud of me at the moment, but Marlene Atkins, my speech team coach, without whom I'd be more nervous than I am now. R. Warner Brown, who taught me to write, think critically, and his wife, who was my kindergarten teacher at Field School, who taught one scared little 5-year-old that school's a pretty good place to be. And And then names like Betty Bingham, who probably is responsible for 3 points on my ACT score, came rolling off my tongue. I realized I didn't name one former manager. I realized the foundation for my success really started in high school, and it was only refined in college. And then I went on to say last night that, of course, you know, you'd have to be at York High School in the 1970s to have any idea who any of those people were. So I asked some York High School seniors who those names are today. And they are names like Schoenberg, Agan, Stipe, Shaw, Lampa, Martin, Lorick, Van Hook, Felix, Kassir, Dowdy, and Anderson, are just a few of the names that would be on the York High School seniors list today. Our teachers really have the most important jobs in our communities because they shape lives, and in turn they shape our future. They've influenced the students that we honored last night, and every student at York High School, and every student in District 205. And those students, those young women and men, will shape our futures. And unfortunately, teacher has become an increasingly difficult job in the last few years. There's budget cuts, which means larger class sizes, constantly changing standards, and our community's increasingly higher expectations have all taken their toll on the job satisfaction that our teachers have. And this board recognizes that. We know it's a tough job, but none of us would be here without the teachers in our lives, because it's our teachers that touch and shape the futures of our children, and our children are our future. So we have a proclamation for every single teacher in this district that says, whereas today's teachers mold future citizens through their guidance and education, whereas today's teachers encounter students of widely differing backgrounds and abilities, and whereas society expects public education to provide quality education services to all children, no matter what their backgrounds or abilities, and whereas the country's future depends in a large measure upon the education youth receive today, and whereas teachers are charged with the daunting task of assuring that no child is left behind by public schools, and whereas teachers spend countless hours outside their classrooms preparing lessons, evaluating progress, counseling and coaching students, performing community service, and whereas Elmhurst Community Unit District 205 recognizes its teachers are providing quality educational services to our children, now therefore be it resolved that the week of May 7th through 11th, 2012 is Teacher Appreciation Week in our community. The Elmhurst District 205 Board of Education urges all of our citizens to join in recognizing the dedication and hard work of our teachers by expressing appreciation for a job well done. So for every teacher in this district, we thank you very much.
We also have another special recognition, and it goes to an individual teacher this evening. This is a recognition of the National Association of Secondary, the Illinois section of American Association of Physics Teachers. This is the High School Teacher of the Year Award. And I believe, John McDonough, you were doing the honors for this one?
I'll start for just a moment. Sorry, button. My name is Mark Golubiowski, and I'm the Science Department Coordinator at York, and I'm going to give a brief introduction here. I've had the pleasure to work with Jeremy for 11 years, and most recently as one of his supervisors. I've gotten to know him as one of the more knowledgeable and capable teachers that I've ever met. And as his colleague for this entire time, certainly one of the more, I'd be hard-pressed to find a teacher who was more attentive and sensitive to the needs of his students. When I learned about the existence of the criteria for the American Association of Physics Teachers High School Teaching Award, it took me less time to decide unconditionally that Jeremy would be the perfect candidate for it than it did to read or say the expression, the American Association of Physics Teachers High School Teaching Award. So to tell you more about Jeremy, I'll turn the microphone over to Mr. McDonough.
Thank you. Mr. Paschke has been chosen as the top physics teacher in the whole state of Illinois, and probably one of the best in the country. The Illinois section of American Association of Physics Teachers, a professional organization of his peers, and I think that says quite about when your peers select you for your professional abilities. Mr. Paschke was nominated by his department coordinator, again, one of his peers. And Mr. Golubiowski, did I get that right?
Yeah.
Thanks to my son, says it's commonly understood, again by his peers, that Mr. Paschke has a keen understanding and awareness of how his students are learning and what they need to learn. And with that keen understanding, I understand he's pioneered certain classroom technology to assist with those very impressive skills. He pioneered his own prototype of something called the clicker system, where every student holds a remote control with 4 buttons. I guess there's a commercial version now. People are making money on this now. But every student, but the prototype was Mr. Paschke's. Every student has a 4-button clicker and answers multiple choice questions on the screen, and the system tallies it immediately and puts it up on the screen so that Mr. Paschke knows whether he needs to move on or he needs to take a little more time with a topic. Apparently he pioneered something else called Web Assign, and the colleges that used his textbook were using an online system. It's an online system for homework that gives immediate feedback to student and allows them to collaborate honestly. And for those of you who are going to have kids in Mr. Paschke's class, if you see them on the phone at 11 or 11:30 at night talking to their classmates, this is collaboration. You got to let it go. He was instrumental in bringing the AP Physics Course C program to York. That's an extension of the AP Physics B program. It's the next level. It goes to a higher level. Apparently he researched which high schools were doing it, why they were doing it. He researched which colleges were offering credit for success on the exam, and then he went ahead and wrote the curriculum for it. Outside the classroom, he helped start the Science Olympiad program, and apparently won Excellence in Coaching Award his first year. Was that correct? And he runs the Scholastic Bowl, and last but not least, the Juggling Club. But let me give you a point of view as a parent. What is it?
See, it's just not that easy, is it, Jane?
Mr. Paschke taught our son. And we went to a 5-minute conference with Mr. Paschke. And I knew he knew how our son would learn. He knew what our son needed. And this was knowing him only a couple months. And when we said we would like him to address certain things, Mr. Paschke came up with a plan, all in 5 minutes, to get my son involved in what was a great fit, the Scholastic Bowl. And as parents, we appreciated the efforts he made above and beyond, just to reach a single student. And we saw those efforts bear fruit. Let me put my board hat back on a second. We have strategic plan, human resources, goal 2, cultivate a high-performing professional culture. I think he's doing that. Strategy 1, tactic 4, recognize and celebrate the achievements of student and staff. So saying that, let me just say congratulations to Mr. Paschke for winning this award. We're fortunate to witness your commitment to our kids and your professionalism. We're proud to have you teaching at York High School, and this award is well deserved. So, I have to read this? Do you want me to read it? Read it? Okay. I've gone long. but I should read it. Okay, I'll go quick. This is the legalese. Whereas the objectives of the Illinois section of the American Association of Physics Teachers are the advancement of the teaching of physics and furtherance of appreciation of the role of physics in our culture, and whereas the ISAPT annually solicits nominations for Outstanding High School Teacher Award through fellow teachers and school administrators who are aware of the exceptional performance of the nominees, and whereas Jeremy Paschke was nominated by fellow teacher and science department coordinator Mark Golubiowski because he has demonstrated a sensitivity and awareness of his students and is able to ascertain how his students are learning through the use of innovative formative assessments and inquiry. And whereas on March 30th through 31st, 2012, at its spring meeting at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Jeremy was awarded the 2011-2012 Outstanding High School Teacher Award. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to Elmhurst Community Unit District 205, York Community High School, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education administrators of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express deep appreciation and congratulations to Jeremy Paschke for his outstanding accomplishment. Thank you.
Next, it's the board's honor to recognize the Churchville Middle School and Sandburg Middle School Science Olympiad contest winners. Mrs. Karen Stufen will do the honors for this one. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Purnell. To recognize students and employees is an honor for us as a board. I'm thrilled for my first time as a recognition opportunity to be recognizing one that's of history in our community, as well as one that began as a grassroots initiative by teachers looking to expand their reach with students. So a piece of trivia. This year's, our very own District 205 PTA Council Science Olympiad Committee Chairperson, Jenny Kopak, her father, Dr. Gerald Putz, co-founded the National Science Olympiad in 1984. The Science Olympiad is devoted to improving the quality of K through 12 science education, as well as increasing teacher and student interest in science, technology, engineering, and math, otherwise known as STEM. That education via tournaments, professional development, and hands-on curriculum. As we in District 205 look to expose students to educational opportunities and experiences that will help them form their life beyond District 205, Science Olympiad's ever-changing event lineup provides a view into a variety of career choices and exposure to practicing scientists and mentors. Science Olympiad is one of the premier science competitions in the nation with 6,400 teams in 50 states. Pretty good, Dr. Gerald Putz. We thank you. More than 65 students from Elmhurst, including a team from Bryan Middle School, competed in the regional contest. York High School sent 8 representatives to the state competition, with 2 two-person teams taking 4th place and the team as a whole ranking 14th. In its first appearance at state-level competition, the Churchville Middle School Science Olympiad team competed in all 23 events. We have some great, outstanding students and teachers and volunteer commitment. But we're here tonight to recognize our state medal winners. Congratulations to each one of you. A special thank you to your teachers, who dedicate themselves to enriching your educational experience. Thank you to your families who support you and guide you. And a special thanks to all of our volunteers who support this wonderful effort in our community. So do we have all the students from Churchville and Sandburg? And they should probably have been there. And I'm sorry that I didn't call them up ahead of time, because they should be standing here while we recognize them and talk about how wonderful they are. Oh, they do, okay. Thank you.
Can I say a little something about
Yes. So I understand we have several teachers who would like to also say a few words, so we'll do that before the proclamation. Okay.
Hi, I'm Christy Evers. I am a science teacher at Sandburg Middle School, and I'm also the Science Olympiad coach, one of the Science Olympiad coaches at Sandburg Middle School. So I'd like to start by thanking the board for acknowledging the success of the Sandburg Science Olympiad state winners. This was a great accomplishment achieved by our team. The year was quite a journey. All of the Science Olympiad students started the year in September by coming to weekly meetings, which continued throughout the year and progressed to many evening and weekend hours in order to get ready for the different events the students competed in for the regional competition in March. Countless hours were spent studying new, complex science topics, performing chemistry experiments, and building unique and challenging build-it projects. The regional competition was an event that started off with a bus journey at 6 a.m. and ended at 6 p.m. The varsity team received 4th place at regionals and advanced to the state competition. To get ready for the state competition, many students redesigned their projects and continued to practice at an intense level. And one student told me that for a week before the competition, he was working on his project until 11 p.m. each evening. As a result, the students did an excellent job at the weekend state competition at U of I in Urbana in April. So thank you to students and parents and volunteers for all the incredible work and help you gave throughout the year. Thank you for stepping up to the challenge, and because of your efforts, we are here right now in celebration. Congratulations.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Elmhurst 205 Board of Education, Superintendent Pruneau, and community members. On behalf of the Churchville Middle School Science Olympiad team, Ms. Heather Rosinski, Ms. Brown, and Mrs. Couch, my name is Anthony Peterson, and I am one of the coaches of the Churchville Science Olympiad team, and I am honored to speak before you. When the season began last October, I spoke to our team and told them very boldly that we were going to make it to the state competition this year. Heather and I both knew that this would take hard work and many long hours of dedication, but we challenged our team to in turn challenge each other and themselves to succeed. At the regional competition in March, our team proved that they were capable of anything and won several medals, including a score qualifying Churchville for the state championship for the first time ever, as well as winning the highly coveted Spirit Award. In the month before the state competition, the team worked even harder to tweak and master their events. While our dedicated parents rebuilt towers, catapults, and even confidence, our success truly was a team effort. On a cold, rainy Saturday last month, our team competed strongly against the best 48 schools in Illinois at the state championship competition. Heather and I could not have been more proud of our team and our kids who medaled in their events. We look forward to state and nationals definitely next year. Congratulations to York and Sandburg for their excellent showing at state as well, and congratulations to the 2011-2012 Churchville Science Olympiad team. Thank you.
So once again, congratulations. Here's the proclamation. Whereas Science Olympiad is a national organization devoted to improving the quality of K-12 science education, and the state tournament is recognized as a prestigious academic science competition in the state of Illinois. And whereas this competition encourages excellence on the part of individual students and requires intense preparation, study, and teamwork. And whereas, following top placement in regional contest, Churchville Middle School and the Sandburg Middle School teams earned 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place medals at the State Science Olympiad meet, held at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, on April 14th. And whereas Churchville team members Andrew Frank and Elena Vesmar earned 1st place in the bottle rocket, and Andrew Kelly and Brian Stotch earned 3rd place in awesome aquifers. And whereas Sandburg team members Sarah Eaton and Catherine Pasternak earned 1st place in microbe mission. Eric Cummings and Catherine Toohey earned 1st place in Dynamic Planet. And Eric Cummings and Martha Eaton earned 3rd place in water quality. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to Churchville Middle School and Sandburg Middle School, to District 205, and to the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to these students, their parents, and teachers, as well as coaches Anthony Peterson, Heather Rosinski, Churchville, and Christy Evers and Christina Lasky Sandberg for this outstanding accomplishment. Thank you. Okay, so I have Sandberg. Okay. Thank you. Churchville. Oh, students. And can I shake your hands? And it doesn't matter who gets what. Okay, thank you. I have this plate.
Oh, we do.
Yeah. Finally, this evening, our last recognition, I'd like to call up Diana Smith. I believe Chris Bloom is also going to do the honors this evening. This is for the National Association of Secondary School Principals Principal Leadership Award.
Sure. I know. I've been told that Diana has a fantastic talk, so I am going to turn it over to her.
Okay. Yikes. So this is Jacob Ruprecht, and it's interesting because I really appreciate the board recognizing one of our students tonight, and Superintendent Pernod and Mr. Collins, you were at our academic awards last night. You saw so many students honored, and I had a chance to talk about Jacob, so he's getting sick of being with me, I'm sure, at these things. There are actually two things that he's being recognized for. One tonight that you have, and that's the NASSP Principal Leadership Award. And he is one of only 100 students in this nation to be honored with this award. High school principals from 3,000 high schools in the country are asked to nominate just one student. And I know they all have as difficult a time as I do. We have such great students. He received last night, got a great big old check for $1,000 and a medal, but it is such an honor to recognize him. The other thing is that he was named to the IHSA All-State Academic Team. He was one of only 26 students statewide. 13 boys, 13 girls, and I was honored to be with Jacob and his family at the banquet just a few weeks ago. And for the board, brought a copy of the program so you could see. He was so amazing. I just have to say a couple of things about him. Of course, he's a great student. He has a grade point average of 4.97 something. He's in the top 5 of our students at York High School. He's a National Merit commended student and AP Scholar. He's in the National Honor Society. He's an Eagle Scout. He's a J. Kyle Braid Scholar, which is probably the first time that you met him here. If you haven't met him outside of the board, he's also a J. Kyle Braid Scholar. And I wanted you to know that when I think back on meeting him, I mean, one of the joys in my job is to see students really find their own voice. If you know Jacob's parents, you know there are already some strong voices in the family. And I really have been so honored to see him find his own voice as well. When he interviewed for the J. Kyle Braid organization, I remember thinking he wasn't as outspoken as the other students, but what was clear is that he is somebody still to this day who listens first and is thoughtful and just a very, very generous, purposeful student, a very effective leader. And as the board knows, this past year when we experienced such financial difficulty and you made very difficult decisions, including our fees for our students went up, Jacob became an active student founding member of the York Student Enrichment Team. And one of my favorite memories of Jacob was to see him at a Rotary Club luncheon where he stood in front of many, many community members and talked about the importance of raising funds to support our students so they could have equal access to academics and activities, and that financial standing should never determine a student's ability to engage at the high school. I was so proud to watch him. So it's easy to understand why I nominated him and why he was chosen for these awards. So, Jacob Ruprecht.
And I'd just like to say congratulations. I was reading through your resume and reading, and your achievements are absolutely amazing, fantastic. What a great model of a York student. We are proud as a community to have you representing us, and look forward to keeping up with your education as you move on. So I will read the proclamation here. Whereas the National Association of Secondary School Principals, Herff Jones, in April announced the 2012-13 Principals Leadership Award Scholarship Program state winners, chosen from over 3,000 applicants. And whereas, in recognizing leadership in co-curricular activities as well as academic performance, the Principals Leadership Award Scholarship Program values the importance of a well-rounded education. And whereas high school principals were invited to nominate a student leader based on their leadership skills, participation in service organizations and clubs, achievements in the arts and sciences, employment experience, and academic record. And whereas Jacob Ruprecht, member of the York Community High School class of 2012, has been a standout in each of these areas and was therefore named as one of the 100 PLA state winners. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to Jacob Ruprecht, his parents, and teachers for this outstanding accomplishment. Thank you. Congratulations.
I have one more recognition, and this is for the school district, as a matter of fact. School Search is an organization and research and consulting firm that assists families nationally and globally in relocating to different school systems within the country. And they do a ranking of all the school districts across the nation. And I am pleased to announce that our district, Elmhurst District 205, has earned a Bright Red Apple Award from School Search. This is out of 868 school districts in the state of Illinois, and only 79 were honored based on 5 objective factors: academic performance, pupil-teacher ratio, expenditure per pupil, educational level teachers, and average teacher salary. And we received a letter from Dr. D. Sugart on this recognition. And in the letter, he mentions that our school district is a very strong school district in all 5 family-favored categories. And so we rank very high nationally. Again, one of 79 in the state of Illinois that receives this recognition. So on behalf of all of our employees, all staff, everyone who works very hard to make Elmhurst really stand out, I think this is a visible recognition of all the hard work that our employees do on behalf of the students and families in the district. So congratulations to all of us.
The The next section is public comment. We have two speakers this evening, Erin McHugh and Katie Grotto. If you would step up, we limit comments to about 3 minutes. While I realize this is, it's not easy to stand up in front of a room of people and tell your opinion, it is our policy not to comment upon the comments at the public comment section, but it is our policy to listen carefully. And we have one more? Okay, that's great. So if you would come up, introduce yourself, give us your address, and tell us what's on your mind, please.
Hello, my name is Erin McHugh. My address is 541 Hillside Avenue. I am senior class president at York, and I wanted to speak today on behalf of Coach Ware. I speak not only as a track athlete, but also as a serious student who has had the honor of knowing Mr. Clyde Ware for 4 years now. First, what I'd like to say is that Mr. Ware has a profound influence on everyone he has met. When I met Coach Ware, he instilled in me, similar to many of the track athletes you see today, the cross-country athletes, military prospects, and students at York, a belief deep inside themselves. This belief is the drive to persevere in times when it seems that, it's impossible. And it provides us with the ability to achieve the unexpected. I have a very deep respect for Mr. Ware because he transformed me into the person I am and many student athletes from York to lead confident and successful lives. He helped me build the core person I am today. I'm mentally tougher, and in part of Coach Ware helping us student athletes transform into strong adults in the future, and to carry on leadership skills, take on challenges, and continue to care about others and carry on a healthy lifestyle. As Mr. Ware says, luck does not exist. It's opportunity and competition and preparedness. It's up to us to take it and run. Now, if the motion stands to relieve this phenomenal person who is an integral part of the PE department at York and who embodies the hope for the future cross-country and track teams, you will not only lose or crush the hearts of the students who look up to him, but bring down the disappointment to parents and teachers who know that this teacher and coach cares more about us than you and I will ever know. Thank you for speaking.
Hi, everyone, and good evening. I'm Katie Grotto, and I am speaking on behalf of the York Girls Track Team. My address is 177 East St. Charles Road, and like I said, I'm speaking for the Girls Track Team, which I am a freshman on. I was recently informed about the possibility of Coach Clyde Ware losing his job. I am extremely against this idea and believe it would be a terrible mistake. Coach Ware was the one who encouraged me to join track in the first place, and I wouldn't have done it without him reaching out to me. He is one of the most motivating, encouraging, and inspiring individuals I've ever met in my life. He's made me a better athlete and overall better person. I feel that being in track has helped improve my self-esteem, teamwork skills, leadership skills, and my ability to commit to something. I've developed skills that I know I will take with me and apply throughout the rest of my life. I've achieved things I never thought I could with his help. Coach Ware has taught me to never give up and pushes me more than I could have ever pushed myself. Also, I know for a fact that he genuinely cares about each one of us and our safety. Last year, he taught the girls helpful self-defense moves he learned while serving as a Marine. My sister has shared these with me, and I have shared them with my friends. I believe I'm speaking for every girl on the track team when I say Coach Ware is more than a coach to us. He's constantly telling us how proud he is of us and how, with hard work, anything is possible. I look forward to going to track every day because I feel appreciated and accepted by my peers and coaches. But I see no point in doing track next year if he is not there. Coach Ware completes our track family.
and without him, there would be an empty void. I am aware that letting him go is for the purpose of saving money and nothing to do with his coaching ability, but I assure you, you will never find a more dedicated individual than Coach Ware. He is an irreplaceable person that we truly can't afford to lose. Thank you for your consideration.
Hello, my name is Katie Wallace, and my address is 349 West Eggleston. I graduated 2 years ago, class of 2010, and I wanted to come show my support for Mr. Ware and talk a little bit about the impact he made on my life. I first met Mr. Ware my freshman year through school. He was my study seminar teacher, and at that time I was kind of struggling with grades and high school in general, and he encouraged me to come out for the track team my sophomore year. And he believed that I could be a really good athlete, and he kind of saw potential in me that I didn't even see myself at that time. And with his hard workouts and his whole training techniques and his encouragement and motivation, I qualified for state my junior and senior year for the 4x1 and 4x2 relays. And I had such a great and positive experience with track in high school and with Mr. Ware and the entire coaching staff that I wanted to continue to do track in college. And with Mr. Ware's help, I was able to compete in track at college, and I'm on the UIC track team today. And now that I have college coaches and I'm around that environment, I have even higher respect for Mr. Ware, because I really understand now what a great coach he was, and he continues today to be my mentor, and I'm truly blessed to be one of his athletes. Thanks.
Thank you to everyone. The next item on the agenda is board committee appointments. And, we've exchanged emails and talked, and, in the effort to maintain as much stability as possible for the representatives to the organizations which the board collaborates in our community. Karen Stufin will be remaining as our LEND representative, also picking up the SACID Board of Directors representative. Maria staying on as our IASB, thank you, all these acronyms, delegate. Mrs. Ebner staying on as the Lazadra Museum representative. Mr. McDonough continuing on as Park Cities and Schools, and Mr. Bloom joining that representation committee, because that fits well into his work with our facilities management and to coordinate with the Park District what we do. Board and and I guess that's all of those committees. Now, as we were, the next thing is a discussion about what I guess we have nicknamed the Big Four committees, which are the committees that we break the board down into. The Board Improvement and Policy Committee, Curriculum and Instruction Committee, Finance and Operations, and the Performance Management Committee. So largely, we'd like to keep the people that have been serving on them intact, because the learning curve is steep, and they're doing great work. I guess our first discussion is a question from me. We are limited, is this the case, to just 3 board members on each committee? Otherwise, we run into quorum issues? Yes. Okay. So with that in mind, I guess the first question is, there are some of these that are easy. Just stay on Board Improvement and Policy, Ebner, McDonough, Stufin, as has been this past year. Let's see, Performance Management, Mr. Bloom, Ms. Hirsch, Mrs. Stufin, as is. Now, the other 2 are the committees that I serve on. I'd certainly like to stay involved in the Finance Committee, but what is the board's feeling about whether I should serve as a committee member, or as Mrs. Gironi has been doing, showing up at appropriate committee meetings that the president should be there kind of coordinating between the four of them. Any feelings one way or the other? Please, Mr. Bloom.
Dave, I mean, we identified a quorum issue with 4 officially appointed. If there's 3 on the committee and there's a frequent attendee, do we end up in the same spot?
I'm not sure legally you would end up in the same spot, but I think, we have had 4 that sat on the meeting. Again, the thing to remember is this is not a decision-making body on any of these committees. So there's no decisions that are being made on behalf of the Board of Education. These are discussions on information. So as we've established before, we recommend 3 because a quorum of 4 appointed to a committee would raise issues, I believe, if not legally, then as a perception of having 4 standing committees, 4 members on a committee would be problematic. 3 with people who are not permanently there, who drop in, who are not actively assigned to the committee, I think is another question. But even then, I would say that, and as we have talked about, if I'm going to have the vast majority of board members at a committee, I would prefer then to announce that that's a committee of the whole meeting and that we would post it as such. And so I've asked board members to let us know if they're planning on attending those meetings as a guest. And if we have 5 or 6 board members, I think it's just prudent to post it as that way. But
I ask because Mr. Collins has a unique set of financial skills, and from a financial committee perspective, his opinion is extremely valuable to us, to the taxpayer, to the community. And how do we make sure that we don't hamstring ourselves as a board from tapping into the experts, by excluding him from this committee? I mean, that's my 2 cents. I would think you'd want the people that are the most versed, if they have a particular area of expertise, on that committee.
But again, you're asking me to establish a committee of 4, and my recommendation is that you are establishing a quorum committee.
Okay, but am I, or was a question before us whether Jim should remain on the committee?
With this, probably the cleanest thing to do here is to appoint Mrs. Deroni into my former slots on curriculum and instruction and finance, and then follow the policy that Mrs. Deroni set, which was the president showing up at the appropriate committee meetings.
I think for us, board committees are relatively new. We tried them for the first time this current school year that we're in. So I think Mrs. Deroni kind of set a precedent saying the committee membership is made up of the 6 board members who are not currently serving as president. There is a significant amount of work involved in serving as board president in terms of additional duties and those kind of things. So I think it kind of lent itself to make sense to say that the 6 board members that were not currently serving as president would be the assigned committee members. I don't know that that's, it was kind of a precedent because that's the way we operated for the year. That's something that we should maybe hear from Mrs. Deroni, your perspective on it, and other board members in terms of, is that something that we want to go ahead with for this year, and say that we do think that we're going to try to establish a precedent and say that the board president abstains from committee membership, but you're never prevented from attending a committee meeting. So I'd be interested in hearing, Mrs. Deroni, your experiences on that.
Well, I think it's important for the board president to keep an eye on the committee work, if you will, and see what is going on in all the committees. I tried to attend all the meetings if I could. And I think it worked well. I was able to get the sense of where the committee was going. I was an observer at most of them, spoke when spoken to, usually. And it worked well for me. I'm sure each president is going to do it in their own way. I think there's something to be said for switching up committees, maybe not this year, and putting people on committees who have no expertise in that area. We have professionals that we've hired to have the expertise that we need when we need it. To say that we have to have our own skills, lined up with a committee is not necessarily true and could be dangerous in terms of micromanagement. So I don't see that that's really an issue, making sure that our skills are paired up with with the committees that we serve on. I think it's worth talking about. What I'd like to do is hear from the administration as to how these committees were working for them. Were there too many meetings? Were there too few meetings? Did they go too long? Were we sticking our noses places we didn't belong? How did it work for the administration? What would they suggest the committee structure look like in an ideal world? I think that would be valuable input that we could have before we make our final decision on how we want to go forward with committees. So, you know, in terms of setting a precedent, I really didn't intend to do that. I thought that would just be the best way to mentor new board members so that they could find out about all these different areas of our district and help to have discussions in a smaller group. I know that the community wasn't particularly thrilled with our committee structure because many of the discussions that used to take place at the board table were now taking place in smaller meetings throughout the month. But, you know, it served a purpose for us, so that's my input.
And I guess that also raises the topic of, yeah, I mean, 1 year does not precedent set, right? So at some point, and tell me if this is the appropriate point, at some point we should discuss with the administration what the appropriate numbers of committees are. Did this work for them? Is this helpful? Does this help their work or hinder their work? And then we should also discuss at what point do we shake all the committees up? Is that every 2 years in election cycles so that we can all serve on a broad range of committees? You know, right now, from talking to the board, it seems like preserving continuity is probably in the best interest of the kids of our school district.
The other comment I wanted to make is that this seems to be a particularly bad time to be changing committee members. Lots of committees have work in progress right now that needs to be completed. A better time to have new committee members would be sometime during the summer or at the beginning of the school year. So we might want to change our policy to say that we make committee assignments maybe even in September after board members, particularly new ones, have had a chance to dabble around and look and see what appeals to them.
I think that's a very good point.
I can see the value in both. I would like to get a clear statement whether having 4 board members in a room is a problem under that it becomes a board meeting as opposed to a committee meeting. If our attorney can give us a quick opinion on that, I just feel more comfortable on that. I think there's a lot of merit now in this year because there are so many, as you said, Susan, so many things underway to keep stability in committee assignments now. But I would think a year is a good term for a committee assignment. We do, you know, we want to have a broader view of the things that are happening and not narrowly place ourselves in certain places. But, you know, because it is a new structure, I think there's some value in, for the first time around, going 2 years. And so I think that's probably a good idea. But after this, I would suggest going 1 year.
My observation, being a board member for a year, seeing committees work for a year, is that there's some value in having someone like the president, like Dave, who goes to the committee meetings, you know, works with the chairs, makes sure that there's a lot of linkages. I mean, you know, we all talk about, you know, we're pulling one lever and it affects other things. And not only continuity between, or the commonalities between committees, but also as it relates to coming to board meetings. And, you know, things come, what should come to board meetings and how they should come to board meetings, and what are we asking for the full board to decide on, consensus or approval, or how that happens. So I think there's value with the president going to the meetings, or someone going to the meetings, the committee meetings, who's also kind of conducting
all of our board meetings. Does that make sense? Without being specific, I just think
yes,
there's so
it does,
much value
because
in that.
You need someone to link the threads that are out of one committee and maybe time for that topic to go to another committee to do the proper work. Yes, because we have plenty of issues that span multiple committees. I understand what you're saying. Mr. Bloom?
Just on the transitions, I think 2 years is right now. I think if we contemplate 1 year, one of the things that we do need to consider is just how we transition, because I know on our committees, I'm assuming on a number of the other committees, there are some strategic things that are longer range in term that we're doing, and to be able to create some continuity for the administration, and when you hand that off to, whether it's a whole bunch of new people, so how do you make that handoff and get them up to speed so that they don't start cold day one with the new committee and all of a sudden the administration has a different set of opinions that says we want to go that way. And maybe it's something where it's staggered, where there's a way that, at least one committee member kind of stays on, or there's some kind of a transition period. But I mean, that would be my concern, would be just that from the other side of the table with the administration, that there's some continuity on our side to make sure that the thread keeps going.
That makes sense. What do people think of the idea of a staggered service terms on those committees?
I don't know if staggered, I don't know how much detail we want to get into. You've got board elections every 2 years. It's a little complex, but I think the idea of continuity is one that is of value. And I also believe, I agree with Mrs. Devroni in that the traditional board reorganization meeting happens very quickly after an election, but I believe that it is not good practice for us to reorganize board committees that are doing work that is tied to this school year. I think a more appropriate time to reorganize or jigger or whatever we want to do with committees would be either the start of the fiscal year or the start of the school year.
Do you think it would be appropriate to kind of start that process in the summer and maybe align it with the district's fiscal year?
The other suggestion I have is that to give the administration a break during the summer from committee meetings and the board. Everybody goes on vacation. They've all got a vacation they need to fit in or they lose it. Unless there's a real need for the committee to meet so that we can start the year with this decided at the board table, I would suggest we consider having a hiatus of committee meetings during the summer. And if we make changes, we do that, have them coincide with the school year.
Let me ask, Mr. Pernod, do you feel, does your cabinet feel that you're in a position to kind of talk at all at this point, or should we continue this discussion into the summer about your view of the committee structure and what gets accomplished in the committees over the summer, and when's, if we took a break, when would be the most appropriate time?
Yeah, I really, this is new to us, so I would really prefer to meet with the executive staff and have that discussion both about the effectiveness of their view on committees, all the issues that you brought up here tonight, and probably appropriate, perhaps I would suggest to bring that back. There's planned retreats coming up. Be a great topic as one of the agenda items either on the board improvement committee or performance management portion, to have that as part of the discussion with the cabinet. And it would probably be at the performance management, because that's when I believe we're going to invite cabinet members, my executive staff, to those meetings. So that would be a great topic to talk about at the retreat.
So, Mrs. Hirsch, your performance management, right?
Have it on my list.
Terrific, thank you. Mrs. Ebner.
The way that Susan handled the committees of going to all the committee meetings, it's, another 4 meetings a month. So, are you able to do that? I mean, that's a big commitment.
That's an excellent question. And until I've tried it, I don't think I have an answer for you. So let's see how it goes. And it sounds like we're going to bring this topic back into one of those retreats. So why don't we address that then? For the immediate, I guess maybe we should answer 2 questions. I would propose that Mrs. Devroni take my place on curriculum and instruction and finance. And then the other decision we should probably make now is if we're going to rotate committee membership, at least this year, what is the date we would choose to do that? Would that be immediately? Would that be July 1st? What are people's opinions?
I thought we'd stay for 2 years.
Well,
but you mean
yes,
in general?
I mean, yes, in general. In general.
To go, I like the fiscal year.
The fiscal year. Okay. Mrs. Droney, you?
Or the beginning of the school year.
I was just going to say that presupposes we're going to end up with the same number of committees after we talk about it, after we hear from the administration. We don't know any of those things yet. So I think we should put that decision off until we hear from what's working for them and what isn't, and go from there. Make that decision.
All right. So after this discussion, it sounds like would everybody feel it's consensus if we said, all right, let's talk about it some more in the board retreat. Let's readdress the topic. And until then, how about Mrs. Duroni replaces me on those two committees? Is that acceptable to everyone? Okay. So then we will move on to superintendent communication.
Yes, the next agenda item is related to tax extensions and our rates, and Chris Welton would like you to give you an update on the latest information on some of the tax assessments that are going on in our district in DuPage County.
Okay, so I have a one-slide presentation tonight on the 2011 tax extension. As you recall, I talked about the tax levy back in November and December. And at that time, there were some knowns and unknowns. We knew CPI at that time was 1.5%. And as you know, the tax cap law limits the school district to increase their tax extension from the 2010 tax extension to the 2011 tax extension by the lesser of CPI or 5%. But the lesser has always been the CPI since 1994. The highest CPI since the inception of the tax cap was 4.1. We had a couple 3.4s, but it's averaged 2.47 since the inception of the tax cap in 1994. But back at tax levy time, we did not know what our new growth EAV would be, and we didn't know what our EAV would be for the 2011 tax year. So that is why we do an estimate at tax levy time. The biggest factor in calculating what to levy is new growth and getting an estimate of that. And at that time, we estimated new growth at 48 million, which was a combination of, we had learned at that time that Elmhurst Memorial Hospital was being placed on the tax roll as new growth for this tax year and had estimated that to be 38 million and other new growth to be about 10 million. The 2010 new growth was 19,219,536. The 2009 new growth was about 24 million. 2008 was about 40 million. So it's been declining since 2009. And so where we actually ended up with was new growth of 38,721,740 for the hospital, and other new growth was 15,424,212. So a total new growth of 54,145,952, which was more than our estimated figure of 48 million, which is good news. And this resulted in, under the tax capped funds or operating funds, a tax extension increase of 3.94%, which is good news, except that the problem is that the hospital has applied for tax exempt status. And if granted, that would result in a large tax refund. So we will need to reserve funds for a potential liability related to a tax refund to the hospital. We have estimated the potential tax refund liability to be $2.9 million. We will be talking with the auditor at tomorrow, or the auditor will be speaking tomorrow at the Finance Committee meeting to talk more about that potential liability and how that would be recorded on our books. The Elmhurst Memorial, or the hospital campus, we have the Center for Health on the campus that's been there since about 1999. But they've applied for tax exempt status on the Center for Health. Actually 54% of that property in 2009. We estimate that potential refund, if they were granted for tax exempt on 54% of that property, that amount is $426,510. For 2010, the Center for Health, again, they applied for tax exempt status on 54% of that property. The tax refund would be approximately $389,495, and then for the current year, the Center for Health, 54% would be $510,949, and on the hospital for tax year 2011 would be $1,597,543, and that's the total potential tax refund of $2,924,497 is what we are currently estimating if the hospital was determined to be tax exempt. But our total tax extension increase over the 2010 tax extension is 4.14%. The capped funds is 3.94%. So a grand total tax extension of $95,275,510.58, and the capped portion is $86,236,842. So that's really my summary of the tax extension analysis, and I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions for Mr.? Ms. Hirsch?
I just want to clarify the hospital piece, because I think the original number that we have been talking about when the hospital was going to be potentially lose their tax exempt status, the number was significantly lower, I believe, than 2.9 million that we had estimated. So I just want to recap and make sure that I understand fully. So the hospital is challenging their non-exempt status. It's dealing with the Department of Revenue and all of these things, and we don't really know how that's going to resolve. But as well, since we last talked about the hospital's taxes, they have gone back now and asked for a reconsideration of those past years with the Center for Health property. Is that a fair assessment of how we came up to the $2.9 million?
Well, they applied in 2009. I think we've just gathered more information at this time. I think the new hospital coming on the tax rolls as new growth resulted in us diving in and looking closer at what the potential tax refund was. So when I've spoke about it before, I wasn't taking into consideration the Center for Health. That happened when we looked more into the records at the DuPage County office to look into the tax exempt status, so that tax-exempt applications on file with the county, and that's when we saw that it was more than just this year, and it's more than just the hospital, it's this Center for Health also.
Okay. And can you also just address what we know about the old hospital site?
Yes. The old hospital site over on Berteau near North Avenue has never been on the tax rolls. And the county is taking a more conservative approach in that they're concerned about tax refunds. It's obviously not a good situation for organizations to have to pay, and we collect, and then turn around and have to refund. So they have not, at this time, put that property on the tax rolls. They do have to file an affidavit every year, similar to we file every year that we are exempt from taxes. So currently, they have said that that property continues to be exempt from property tax.
Anyone else? Mr. McDonough.
Just to simplify, it's approximately, what's the total amount that's going into this segregated fund to address potential refund?
$2,924,497. That's an estimate.
And how much of that is new growth and how much of that is the
new growth is on the hospital, which is $1,597,543.
So the non-new growth part is a drop in our tax cap ceiling that we have to find another way to fill because we have to segregate this money for payback. Is that right?
Well, it's not considered new growth. I mean, and those monies are all potentially going to be a tax refund. Actually, all of the amounts are going to be a tax refund. The new growth is excluded or exception to the tax cap so that it could be more than the CPI for that part of it.
But the new growth doesn't replace money that would have been collected elsewhere. Is that right?
Right. And the other thing you've pointed out before is the interest that we would need to pay on the tax refund, which is at the rate of CPI of that tax year. So 2009, it was 0.1%. So the refund, so we would have to pay 0.1% on the 426,510, but in the 2010, the CPI was 2.7. So we would have to pay interest of the CPI 2.7 on the 2010 refund of $389,495 is our estimate, and then in the 2011 refund, which is over $2 million, would be at the 1.5% CPI.
And we're certainly not making that.
We are not.
By having this fund segregated, the spread is approximately?
Well, we're earning less than 1%, probably closer to a half, maybe on our current investments.
And when do we expect to hear the ruling, the decision? Do you have the crystal ball?
No idea, but the sooner the better as far as we're concerned. But it's a statewide issue that's going to be decided in the courts or in the legislature. So I'm not sure when that.
Anyone else? I have a couple. Just so I can frame this issue properly, there's three, in my mind, there's three main moving parts. The first is the new growth that we'll collect on the hospital, the new hospital this year. That money Mr. Welton, in round numbers is about $2 million? Is
About
that correct?
1.6.
$1.6 million, which we need to put in the bank, earn almost nothing like all of us receive on our bank accounts, but have the privilege of paying out 2.7% this year, is that correct?
1.5 on this year's.
1.5%, okay. So we get nothing, we pay out 1.5%. So that costs us whatever that math is. But that, unfortunately, is the least costly part of this. The $389,000 that 54% of the Center of Health paid in real estate taxes in 2010, and then the $426,000. So let's just call that about $800 and some odd $1,000 that they paid in property taxes in 2009 and 2010. We spent. And so that $800,000 is the most costly part, because if they win their claim, we have to refund that to them with interest. And so that would cause we would have to reduce our budget by about $800,000 to compensate for that next year, assuming they win the claim next year and we owe it to them next year. So I guess my question is this, do you happen to know off the top of your head, is this still in the courts, or is the Illinois legislature now involved in this issue? Because this seems to be a pretty Elmhurst-specific issue, that I don't know how many other hospitals out there have this office building complex that they've now decided about half of it is tax exempt, and have gone back and applied for tax exempt status on half of this building that we had been collecting property taxes on for a decade. That sounds like that doesn't reoccur that often, and that might just be Elmhurst specific. And I'm wondering how involved we need to get with our elected representatives in Springfield if, in fact, this is being resolved in the legislature.
I'm not sure if it's going to be the legislature or the courts that decide how this works out.
Can we ask our law firm as to exactly where this is and what their recommendation would be? I mean, if it is in the legislature, I think the school boards and the people of Elmhurst's voice should be heard in Springfield, and not put that burden on our kids. And if it's in the courts, it's in the courts.
That sounds good. I will talk to our attorney tomorrow about that.
Okay, thank you.
I believe, we will check, but I believe this was in the legislature. The governor had given a committee an amount of time to come to some kind of understanding and agreement on this issue. I don't believe the committee ever reported out a recommendation. And so at that point, I believe the committee was disbanded and it went back to the legislature because there was not a recommendation to the governor about how this should handle. And so that's the last status update I remember seeing. Now, whether or not this could ultimately go to the court, probably pretty good odds, I would think, depending on which way this position is. But we will check and find out. Karen, have you heard anything on the legislative front?
I haven't.
Okay.
I was racking my brain. I mean, there are a few other hospitals, Chris, but not in DuPage County. Maybe that's why it's not part of LEND.
That could be
but
true.
I also understand that if the hospital filed for tax exemption, that there's something going on. They wouldn't do that if it was just up to the legislator at this point. So I'm, as I try to peel it away as we have this discussion, I'm not sure if there's two parallel processes going on. So I mean, I can check with our executive director of LEND just in case she knows, because I know Edward Hospital in Naperville.
There's Central DuPage Hospital.
There you go.
Advocate Good Samaritan in Downers Grove, Edward, Hinsdale, and then there's a small one called Adventist Glen Oaks. So there are other DuPage hospitals. That I think there's 30 hospitals in the state.
Yep. So I will check with our executive director of LEND as well to make sure not only, what is there something that we can do, but exactly, who we call and numbers and the message and all those sorts of things so that we can communicate it.
Yeah, Mrs. Stupid.
Because that's a really good point. It's finances, and it's really taking money away from educating students.
Right.
And do they
And-
understand the implications?
Yeah, if you could check with Len, Mr. Welton, if you can check, or Mr. Purnell, if you can check with our attorneys just to find out where it is. If it is in the legislature, we can talk about exactly what our action is. And I know Mr. Bloom, Mrs. Ebner, and Mr. McDonough want to speak, so why don't we do it in that order?
And some of the stuff that had come over from the attorneys, Chris, I think that there was a moratorium that was lifted.
Mm-hmm.
The DOR is making decisions. Even when they rule against the hospital appeals, and it's caught up in the courts there. So even if you can get it through, depending on how it goes, even if the hospital were to win their case, we would appeal, or somebody could appeal, or if they were to lose their case, they could still appeal. We still have to hold this money. The question I had was as it pertained to, I think the last piece of the most recent email that came across from Aries was this ability to file, what's it called, an omitted assessment. The concept being that you don't preclude your right from going back and collecting it based on the decision that's ultimately made, but rather than us hold it and accrue the interest expense to refund it, we leave the money with them and then go back and get it later and avoid that interest cost. So I wasn't sure whether
that he was talking in that case about the old hospital near North Avenue, where he's saying that they have not put that one on the tax rolls for that reason.
But could that mechanism be used in this case to save us the issue of having to escrow that money?
They were ordered.
Could we ask?
Statewide, and so it's already been put on the tax rolls, and the tax bills have already gone out for 2011.
That might be a good question to add to your list for the law firm.
Yeah, I'm guessing this may go on longer than 2011 anyway, so let's see if we can pursue that.
Could go on for years if the hospital does not get the good claim that is favorable for them. They'll appeal. So, I mean, it could be years or, who knows?
Yeah, it could add up to a lot of interest. And John, did you have some?
I just want to hope that whatever legislative solution happens recognizes the difficulties that a tax refund visits on a school district subject to the tax cap. In particular, particularly burdensome to a district such as ours, who's trying to make responsible cuts and has these things put upon us by the interaction of the tax cap and large refunds.
Now, I would say if, in fact, this is in the legislature, we need to quickly develop a very short legislator understanding friendly of, just a quick presentation that we can tell our legislators of how this impacts us in this school district and what the special impact is and why they need to be aware of it.
My point is not to take a position on the underlying issue of the exemption itself, but just the way that it's occurring is particularly difficult on the school district, and I think that story has to be told.
I would agree. I mean, however it turns out is how it turns out, but the way it's coming about has a very adverse impact on our kids.
And especially if it goes on longer, because it's not as bad when it's new growth. But if it were to go on another year and that large parcel was next year when it's not new growth, when it's existing EAV, that's really when that could hurt. So the quicker we get it resolved, the better.
All right. We have our plan in place. We'll go forward. Thanks, Mr. Welton. Next is board committee reports. The first is the Board Improvement and Policy Committee.
All right, I'm going to report out on 4 items from our last committee meeting, which was held April 25th. First of which was planning for the board improvement retreat, of which we have secured a date of June 26th. We were talking about how the structure and the objective and of that retreat, and we're talking about our survey will be distributed this month to all the board members. It would be aggregated, and then we'll review the survey results. We'll discuss our strengths, weaknesses, and what we're doing okay with, and then we'll reach a consensus on some top focus areas and develop an action plan to execute the next steps. Next item is engagement of the board in the community. What we'd like to do is, once again, I know you've heard about this before, but we're really looking to organize our June meeting so that we don't have a closed board session before our public board meeting, so that we can debut our Meet the Board. So I'm going to announce to everyone that on June 12th, we're planning to have a Meet the Board where anyone who wants to come into this office and have informal Q&A, if you will, with the board. We are looking at all the board members being present as we debut this Meet the Board. We understand that we will have to look at it to see if we continue in that fashion or not. The reason that we were thinking that it may not be possible is if board members, all 7 board members, cannot get to the board meetings, early. But we'll just debut something and get feedback and adjust as needed.
Karen, what time were you thinking that Meet the Board starts?
We were thinking the same time, like a 6 o'clock, like we do the closed session, so that we have enough time to do some Q&A with the community or whoever shows up.
Okay.
Before we start the meeting at 7:30, so we're not late starting.
Very good.
Okay. So we will be communicating and advertising that. Legislative engagement by the board. Our previous discussion was actually a great preview into our committee work. And really what we want to do is try to lay a foundation of what our legislative engagement plan would be, so that we can, 1, raise awareness, and 2, advocacy. There's a lot of education legislation going on, as we all are aware, and therefore the decisions that have difficult decisions that have had to be made the last couple of years. What we're trying to do is say, learn from other boards, learn from our executive director at LEND, and understand how we can really have a cohesive plan in place. So, for example, we get emails from LEND on call to action. We get emails from our National School Board Association in D.C. for call to action. And when you're a new board member and you don't really have kind of a plan in place, you're just really not sure, how you do that as impactfully as possible. And so we really want to wrap our arms around that, and so that's what we're talking about. So, some steps, just to give you a preview, is we talked about having our executive director of LEND meet with the committee first. She was a school board member in the 80s. She has been in education since then, various different capacities, and has been in Springfield a number of decades now. And so she'll work with the committee and, kind of give us, things that she knows what other boards are doing, because she would like all of her school boards to be more two-way advocacy through LEND. And so, she'll meet with us, and then at some point we will propose that she come and present to the full board at a board meeting, so that, what she can do is share some of the insights like you see from my emails that I send to the full board about what's going on in not only Springfield, but I've also started to share some things that are going on at the federal relations level. She can, give the full board a better perspective of, what she does for us, and advocacy and awareness from a legislative standpoint. Board improvement updates. There's various different items, some of which I already covered. I I guess at this point, oh, one last thing is the June Board Improvement Policy Committee meeting, we're going to reschedule due to our board retreat. It was currently scheduled for June 27th. We have the board retreat the evening of the 26th. So at some point, people will see that we'll reschedule our board committee meeting on the 27th to some other time in June. Any questions on the meeting minutes?
Hearing none, let's hear from the Curriculum Instruction Committee.
We talked about 3 topics last week. It was May 2nd. And the first topic was an update from Jane Bailey from Conrad Fisher School. The entire school population at Conrad Fisher can now benefit from Title I funding due to the percentage of students from disadvantaged homes. That number is at least 40% for the entire school population to benefit from Title I funding. So knowing that, Jane Bailey put together a committee to look at achievement gap and identify needs and develop strategies to close the gap for low-income and students and/or students of Hispanic heritage. So the committee was formed and goals were set for MAP and ISAT results. Also, goals were set for increasing parent involvement. And the recommendations from this committee were to help all students become ready for high school by starting development of a full-day kindergarten program, starting small group tutoring during the lunch period, more professional development for teachers, continue summer programming, and also increasing support for families to become to have better access to medical needs and community services. So we will see this school improvement plan at a later date, and I don't know the month yet. Did she yeah, we don't know yet. Okay. So that will be coming, further in the year. Okay, the second piece we talked about were PE waivers, and this turned out to be a big topic that we talked about for a while. The Illinois School Code allows juniors and seniors to be exempt from daily physical education requirement if they are varsity athletes. So we talked about possibly, or just, initial conversation, no decisions were made, if we would want to expand that to freshmen and sophomores who are athletes. And a big discussion ensued, and it really comes down to, which we didn't have at that time, or what are the numbers of kids that freshmen and sophomores that are varsity athletes, freshmen and sophomore athletes that want to take a study hall. So there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and we will get that at a later date from York High School. We also talked about possibly applying for a waiver through the General Assembly. You can apply for a waiver for 2 years, up to 6 years total. There's a long lead time to do that, and we decided to not pursue that route at this time. We also talked about academic waivers from the PE requirement, and those are taken as a case-by-case basis. And I think the end of the discussion really comes down to, do we want to increase the waiver program, or do we want to look at the PE department and find ways where we can bridge gaps between what the athletes in their PE class and have those work hand in hand. So I think there are a lot of questions to be answered. We did not make a decision. We decided to continue this discussion in the fall. Any questions? Do you want to capture it? It was a long discussion. Hadn't been talked about in a while. So lastly, the REACH program. We did not really get much time to talk about this. So I did not report much in the meeting minutes. Kathleen Liacci did a nice presentation about a REACH report that was done about 2 years ago. And we reviewed 7 key questions from that report. There's not much else to say about the discussion right now. We are going to continue the discussion on June 6th, our next Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. And I believe that will be the only agenda topic, right? So there'll be more coming, and we'll get a really good conversation about the REACH program next month.
Any questions for Mrs. Ebner? Hearing none, let's move on to Mr. Bloom and the Finance and Operations Committee.
The last meeting of the Finance and Operations Committee was the community meeting on facilities fees and policies, and I'm happy to report no injuries were reported at that meeting. We actually made it through. And that was a community discussion designed to engage our customers with respect to our facilities fees and usage policies. It's the first step in a process that's an ongoing process that's going to have multiple steps for updating these policies. And tomorrow night at our Finance Committee meeting, we'll have a debrief. We have not met since that meeting. The general premise of the meeting was that given the district's difficult financial situation, we were looking at all our costs, and as part of this, we found that we are not covering our costs through facility rentals, and wanted to share our costs with the community and talk about potential solutions. But in addition, we also wanted to get customer feedback on the other aspects of facility usage and kind of customer friendliness and how that works. And I think we had a very good and engaged discussion with, I think, a majority of the sports programs in the town were represented. I think if I could pull some themes out of it, I think there's a general understanding of the financial predicament that we're in, and a willingness to discuss the new fee structure. I think the current thinking is an hourly-based rate is something that would work for us. Now the levels that are set are still to be negotiated and discussed, but I think that there was not a lot of pushback based on that. I think they realized that covering our cost is something that's fair to ask for. But I think that the other piece of that is that any changes we make need to be sensitive to the budget cycle that these groups have. Recognizing that imposing a fee after they've imposed their fees could create havoc to their financial statements, or their financial situation. So we're going to continue those discussions and make sure that we're sensitive to that as well. Some other items, we need to examine the reservation procedures to manage, people's ability to block out huge blocks of time in our facilities. And I think that one of these suggested solutions that makes some sense to us is something similar to what the Park District does with its facilities advisory or athletic advisory committee, where you get the folks that use it in a room together and you ask them to help figure it out. As adults, kind of, whether it's horse trading or whatnot, for blocks of time to make sure. Our goal is to have the facilities used as much as possible. And so I think to that end, one of the items that we'll discuss tomorrow night is, forming advisory committees. I think broken up into segments we talked about at the meeting about the aquatic center being, a unique animal in and to itself, and having some discussion around that. Indoor facilities users, outdoor facilities users, and then some discussion about whether we need a separate classification for the academic side as well, or if that fits under the indoor. So all in all, a good discussion, I think, with the community, a great first step. There's a lot of work to be done, and we'll continue that journey tomorrow night.
Any questions for Mr. Bloom? I have one. Oh, go ahead, Mrs. Ebner.
I missed it. Are the community members coming back tomorrow night, or it's?
No, it's okay. Well, they're welcome to come and join. I think that we as a group are kind of noodling on this feedback. We've had a week to kind of digest it. We're going to get together and talk about, okay, so no, what do we do next? How do we start to outline, a straw man to share? How do we address some of the issues? What are the different ways and opportunities? I for one would like to, reach out and talk to the Park District a little bit more about how their program works. I think we'll talk about that too. So, it's everybody's welcome.
Ms. Hirsch.
Just a quick question. I know that we probably didn't have 100% attendance. So is there an effort in place, or do we have a good solid list of the organizations that use our facilities? Can we reach out to those organizations that may not have been able to have a representative there, just to make sure that we're communicating completely and fully with all of the users of our systems? We may have had everybody there, I'm not sure. But
I know for one we didn't have Team Elmhurst, so we assessed most of the fees to them. Just
was
kidding,
Mr. Chris
Karsten.
Bloom.
Just kidding, Karsten. I think we can take a look. I mean, we have a reservation system. We know what's that, and we have a list of everybody that came in the organizations that we were from.
Yeah, so if we could just make an effort to.
I agree with you. It's something that we want to kind of corral the folks that maybe not didn't make it to make sure that they're there.
And I would say one thing that left that meeting was it was clear this would not be the last meeting, so there's going to be plenty of opportunities for people to come and be heard. Mrs. Stufen.
So what we're saying is that we're going to transition into the fees, or we don't know, it stays as is until we move into it, or?
What we're saying is we've gathered a bunch of feedback. Yep. We know we have an issue. We've got some input from the community on how we're talking about some numbers now to try to figure out what the gap really is to close. But at the end of the day, we do have to talk to these folks and make sure that we're not handing them a bill after they've factored in their budgets. So I don't have a timetable just yet.
Okay. So it'll be a transition in.
Yes.
Would this be appropriate to mention our bond financing that we did on May 1st? Just, I was going to ask you, I know you're on the spot, but now that you I mean, it's your committee now. You were instrumental in making that happen.
I don't have anything in front of me prepared, so and you signed the bond purchase agreement, so I would more than happy to turn it over to you, but thank you.
All right. I mean, we've issued a press release, but frankly, it's not it's not a once-in-a-lifetime event, but it's an infrequent event when a Board of Education can come and tell the taxpayer that we're actually not asking for more money. In fact, we saved them money. As a result of the 2006 referendum that put additions onto all of our schools, we issued about $54 million in debt as a school district. We were able to refinance on May 1st just $7 million of that. And the reasons for that is because we wanted to issue bank qualified bonds, and you're only allowed to issue $10 million a year of that type of bond, and we've already entered into or we will enter into this year, a $2 million capital lease for computer equipment, and that counts as debt. So bottom line, we could only issue $7 million. But in just the $7 million that we issued, we saved the taxpayer over the life of these bonds about $582,000. And that is money that directly comes off of people's property taxes. That is not money that comes back to the school district and can be respent, although we have plenty of uses for that money. But because that is in the Byzantine system of property taxes, a separate item that we specifically levy for is to pay our debt, we were able to save that for the property taxpayers of District 205. And I guess the only thing to add to that is we'll continue to watch the bond market, watch for opportunities to refinance the rest of it. Our legal window to issue more is January 1st, 2013. I'm sure the Finance Committee will be coming back, I would recommend, this fall to pass another resolution so that we are ready to go should interest rates be favorable in January of 2013 to refinance more and attempt to save the taxpayer more money through judicious refinancing of our existing debt. With that said, then let's move on to the superintendent's agenda, the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's consent agenda, including items A and B.
I second the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Hirsch, seconded by Mrs. Stufen. This involves, all right, I'm sorry, discussion. Any discussion on those items?
These are things that have been brought before the board. We've had lengthy discussions about both the health insurance, dental insurance, as well as student fees. So not new information. I think I can support these.
Okay. Mrs. Deroni.
Strictly speaking, on the consent agenda, you don't have discussion. You might ask if anyone wishes to withdraw something to have discussion on, but because it's on the consent agenda, someone makes a motion and you call for a roll call vote.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, do we need to do a roll call vote on every consent agenda, or just if it involves spending money?
Money.
So do we need a roll call vote on this? So I guess technically we are yeah. All right, so just to be safe, Mrs. Walsh, a roll call, please.
Ms. Hirsch?
Yes.
Ms. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
7 ayes, no nays, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's action item agenda. And Mr. Purnell.
Yes, this is a difficult item for us to bring to you this evening because it really involves some of our employees and the possible displacement of those employees from their present position. And what I'm referring to is the approval of recommendation to enter into a contract with Elmhurst Memorial Hospital for nursing services across the district. And I have included in your packet a rationale for how this came about. Basically, as we have analyzed the number of students who are coming into the school district, we have seen consistent increases in the kind of medical involvement that some of our students have coming into the school district. More and more, sometimes life-threatening issues, sometimes more and more medical procedures that we are being asked to do as a school district as part of a public education to accommodate these students, to make sure they're comfortable, but at the same time meet their medical needs. And as I said, their medical needs are becoming more and more complex, more and more involved. The other thing that has happened is there's been 2 recent acts that have been approved by the legislature, the EpiPen Act and the Diabetes Care Act. And both of those, again, talk to the school district's responsibility to meet the needs of medically fragile students in a number of settings in the school district. So we began in the fall to consider and look at the possibility of replacing our health aides that we presently employ with full-time nurses at each building, given some of our concerns that we were seeing. We asked for a cost estimate from Elmhurst Memorial and looked at those costs. I have included that cost estimate in your packet this evening, and what we found was a difference in what we presently spend with our present program to moving toward a full-time Elmhurst contract with Elmhurst Memorial, and the difference is about $37,000 overall for the district. Given that, and given the difference in the cost, we really felt we had an obligation to move this forward for board consideration, and that's where we're at this evening. The other thing we did is we did get a legal opinion from one of our legal advisors about what they would recommend for the school district in terms of liability from a medical standpoint for the school district. And they indicated that the school district would have a significantly reduced level of potential liability exposure if a full-time nurse was assigned to each building. The other problem we're having is that we have, because of some of the medically fragile students in some buildings, we have assigned full-time nurses to some buildings and not all. The problem is now we have unequal services across the district for these students. And if I walk into a building as a parent and I have a medically fragile student and there happens to be a health aide there, one of the things we can't do is discriminate on that child's location of where they attend school, and yet we may not have the capability of meeting all those medical needs short of hiring a nurse in that particular situation, again, depending on the child. So we've got some unequal services in the district that also complicates this. And so tonight, we are making a recommendation to the Board of Education to consider approving entering into an agreement with Elmhurst Memorial Hospital to provide a certified nurse at each school and provide equitable nursing care for the district school-wide. And again, we feel future liability, the welfare of students, the safety of students is driving this decision. So We are open for questions.
Anyone? Ms. Hirsch?
The school district has had health aides working in all of our schools for more than 20 years. These employees, part of the paraprofessional and support-related personnel organization, are caring individuals who have taken care of everything from the bumps and bruises that occur on the playground to being responsible parties in a student care plan created in conjunction with families and supervised by our shared school nurses. Our health aides and nursing staff have worked together well to provide a level of care and service for our students which has been efficient and thorough. Although not required, many of our health aides have completed additional medical training such as CPR, EMT certifications, and other training to support their responsibilities. In addition, our health aides have assisted in supporting the ever-increasing administrative duties that take place in our school offices. They have served admirably our students, parents, and staff. The recommendation to place RNs in place of health aides is one that has been brought forward several times in the last few years. The increasing incidence of life-threatening illnesses and conditions is cited as the primary cause for placing a registered nurse in each building, reducing the potential liability the district might incur in case of a life-threatening situation. While I agree that it is prudent to assess and protect the district against risk, however, the costs associated with those risks must be balanced with the benefits. Placing a registered nurse in each building instead of having a nurse available on the radio does not necessarily guarantee a higher level of service. For many conditions, the care plan requires the cooperation and collaboration between the classroom teacher, office staff, the gym teacher, the art teacher, everyone who comes into contact with these students. We must remember that we are in the business of educating students. And given 3 years of budget cuts, which are now directly affecting the classroom, I cannot support spending an additional $37,000 every year in order to mitigate this risk. I recognize that I am probably in the minority on the board. I might be the lone voice with this opinion, and I respect my fellow board members' opinions and concerns. At this point, I would like to thank the staff who have worked for many years and have served our students so well. We appreciate all the care and attention that you have shown our children. And we are confident that as you move into new positions within the district, you will demonstrate the same care and commitment in your new positions.
Any other discussion? Mrs.
We don't
Durham?
have a motion on the floor yet.
Oh, you're right, we don't. Thank you. Thank you very much for prodding me through this. We need a motion. Mr. McDonough.
I make a motion that the Board of Education approve the recommendation to enter into a contract with Elmhurst Memorial Hospital for nursing services.
Second.
Moved by Mr. McDonough, seconded by Mrs. Durroni. Any further discussion? Mrs. Ebner.
Yeah, I agree with what Mrs. Hirsch is saying, but there's a lot of other factors in consideration when you have the disparate services at schools. It's not a uniform service. It can cause problems with having to transport students to a different school because the services at their particular school, their home school, is not adequate. So there are many other considerations, and I too am very grateful for the health aides and all of the work that they do too.
Mrs. Durroni.
This is really not an easy vote to take at all. These people have been the prime nurturers in our schools for years. They've been the people that our children have gone to feel safe, to feel cared for, and to reward them in this way by saying, you know, you don't have your job anymore, thanks very much, is not right. Having said that, the vote is not a commentary on the work that these people did. This vote is a commentary, in my mind, on the litigious nature of our society. And we've been told by 2 law firms that in order to protect ourselves, in order to protect the district, we need to have a registered nurse assigned to each school. And it's not right with a capital R, but it seems to be the right thing to do for the district in terms of liability. Again, it pains me to have to vote on this to, quote, reward these people in this way. Now, I'm sure we're going to find, you know, caring individuals who will fill in their places and who will do the duties that these people are doing, but it just doesn't seem like it's appropriate. But I don't see that we have any other choice. I will be supporting it.
Anyone else? I mean, Mrs. Steuven, did you?
To me, this is yet another legislative issue. And I think it further supports, you know, we as a board and Board Improvement and Policy Committee looking at, you know, how do we become better advocates? Because here I really do see it as a real issue, another real issue where we are in the business to educate students. I completely understand that we have to have the students be able to learn in the environment, and I understand that's why the legislators are passing these mandates. But at the same time, they're passing mandates that are taking away from education from our students. So, you know, my personal take is that, you know, we really do need to do the job of, just as you all come to us as elected officials in education, you know, go to our legislators and help them understand truly the financial impact of their mandated decisions that are not being funded.
Anybody else? I have one thing to add. I mean, this truly is the worst part of serving on a board of education, to have to make decisions like this to impact people's lives. I mean, it's terrible, especially when those people whose lives we're impacting have made such a positive impact on our own children's lives. I mean, grade school that my children attend, both have made many, many trips. In fact, I would say my youngest is probably the charter member of the frequent visitors program to the health aides office. And in each time, whether it's a Band-Aid, a runny nose, or I'm just having a bad day and I think my stomach hurts, they've all been extremely well cared for, felt extremely safe and comforted. And this is just a really tough vote to take. And you know, the real people it impacts, besides the people that the health aides that will be moved to other positions where hopefully, because they are so caring about our kids, we'll be able to stay in contact with kids, is the real people it impacts the greatest are the people we just hired into some secretarial positions or whatever positions work in the hierarchy of the organization that the health aides work in. And those are the people that are going to lose their jobs, and I feel terrible for them. But, you know, we've discussed this for over a year, as Mrs. Hirsch said, and I really don't disagree with anything Mrs. Hirsch said, but we've discussed it for a year. There's multiple factors here, as Mrs. Steuven said, the legislative part, as Mrs. Duroni said, the liability part of this, and as Mr. Pernot said, just the increased demands of the medical conditions that our kids come to school with and the level of service that we need to give them. And this is a very unfortunate circumstance. So thanks for listening to me, and I guess with that, we'll take a vote. Mrs. Duroni, is this a voice vote or a roll call vote?
It's probably a roll call vote.
Here on the, all right. Mrs. Walsh, if you would.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Droney?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Ms. Hirsch?
No.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
No.
Mr. Collins?
Yes. Motion passes. Sorry.
You need to keep track of the ayes and the nays and then report them.
Yes, motion passes, 5 ayes, 2 nays. And then we move on to upcoming meetings. Now, one of these we rescheduled this evening, right? Wednesday, May 9th, tomorrow, Operations and Finance Committee. Thursday, May 10th, the Performance Management Committee, the Finance and Operations Committee meeting occurs in this building at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. Thursday, May 10th, Performance and Management Committee occurs in this building at 7 p.m. May 22nd is our next regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting, 7:30 p.m. in this room. Wednesday, May 23rd is the Board Improvement and Policy Committee in this building at 7 p.m. And I guess we didn't reschedule. Those are just May meetings. And then any further board communications? Mrs. Hirsch.
The Performance Management Committee is meeting on Thursday evening this week, and we are going to be working very diligently on defining all of the aspects of the board retreat. We've been talking about a board retreat for several months now. I hear different board members talking at different times. Oh, we'll get to that when we have the board retreat. We did one of those this evening during the meeting. I think at this point the board retreat is going to be 5 days long. But in all seriousness, any concerns or things that we may have missed, I would appreciate it if board members could just shoot me a quick email of topics that you believe should be included for board discussion on our board retreat. Mrs. Stufen has already planned the board self-evaluation. That's a separate topic. But for the open session of the meeting, where we're going to be looking at the district performance indicators, there are some things that Mr. Pernod and I have already started talking about, some things that I've had individual conversations about what we'd like to talk about during the retreat. But it would be helpful if you could send any requests that you have to me before our Thursday meeting. Thank you.
One thing that I'd like to add to that is the issue of school liaisons. I think we all pretty much agreed that it makes sense if we're going to do any switches to do that with the start of the new school year, so we can use the district's fiscal year, July 1st, as that switch date. But please also send me an email. I know Mrs. Stufen has made her wishes known. If you wanna change schools, stay at the schools you're at, change the type of schools that you're liaison to. Although I think one thing that makes it a lot of sense is that I think we started out by saying, look, we're not going to be liaison to a school where we have a kid in attendance. Does that kind of rule still make sense to everybody? Okay, so we'll stay within those guidelines, and just let me know, and in June we'll switch around what needs switching around. Thanks. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mrs. Hirsch, second by Mrs. Ebner. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes, 7 ayes, no nays. We're adjourned. And Mrs. Duroni, thank you very much for your guidance, and I'm going to keep relying on you.